It's October 2016. This year in the UK it's been incredibly dry. So there hasn't been that much mushroom action. There has been mushrooms, but not an abundance. However, last week there was a deluge, a literal bursting of the dams of rain. So we're out mushroom hunting to try and take advantage of that fact. And Ren is with us. And we're on the hunt for one of my favourite mushrooms, which is the orange birch bolete. Which is my favourite bolete, although the genus is not bolete. The genus is Leccinum. And we found one. So here is one. And as you can see, it's a rather big mushroom compared to Ren's head. Now, this one is all eaten by slugs and is ballooned up in size due to it having absorbed a lot of water. So it's not really a very good specimen. We would say this one is too big. Let's try and find another. We found another one. You can just about see it here, but this one is too small. So we found one that's too big, one that's too small. Can we find one that's just right? Here's one that's just right. Just the right size for picking. Not too small, not too big and overused, overwatered, overwet. Firm, a good edible. When you're looking for a mushroom like buses, three come at once. We have 3 of them here. This one's a bit too small, but there's 2 here which are really good. Now what I really like about the orange birch bolete is that it tends to be maggot free until quite a late stage in the development. So you can get quite big ones that's still very good inside. Whereas some other boletes, like the bay bolete, tend to get maggoted very quickly. So if you look at the stem of this, it's like incredibly clean. And there was actually a couple of tiny slugs on the outside of this stem, but for some reason they seem to be highly resistant of flies. I mean, you can see where flies are entering on the pore layer, and the pore layer is starting to go spongy on this one, so it is a bit old. But I bet you that that cap is still actually alright.
Look, Ren, a mushroom!
It's actually probably Leccinum aurantiacum. We've got this mushroom home, and I want to have a look inside it. So it's quite difficult to see, but in natural light, these are actually, they're not black. These are called squamules, by the way, these kind of flocose protrusions from the stipe, and they're an identifying feature. So there's 2 quite similar orange birch boletes. Well, there's a few actually, but the 2 most common are the orange birch bolete, which is Leccinum versipelle, and it's another kind of orange birch bolete called Leccinum aurantiacum. Now this is Leccinum aurantiacum because it has sort of dark orange-brown squamules rather than dark black squamules, and the cap is probably more, I would say, more orange. But what you can do is get a book like this, British Boletes with Keys to Species by Geoffrey Kibbe, and this kind of has a key where you choose the cap colour, you say what colour the squamules are, and then it goes through a list of features until you come out with the correct identification. I know this is Leccinum aurantiacum because of the colourings on the stem. See, if you look at the inside of that, this is why I love these orange birch boletes. So both versipelle and aurantiacum, they very often have just very clean interiors, despite, if you look on the bottom of this, you can see where all of the flies have gone in, but they've not made their way into the cap. And this is really common on these orange birch boletes, and why I think they're one of my favourite mushrooms, because they're always really good quality, even when they're kind of big and started to puff up a bit like this one. These do discolour black on exposure to air and when cooking, but they're fine and they taste great to eat. Now, with a lot of boletes, these actually taste better after you dry them for some reason, so we'll probably dry these. Now I'm going to point something out here that's kind of obvious but really important. Now these are pores rather than gills, and this is a distinguishing feature of boletes and other polypores, but in particular in boletes, this kind of standard mushroom shaped mushroom that's growing out of the ground, but it does not have gills. I just want to illustrate there that these are obviously pores. You can see the tiny holes. This is makes it a very safe mushroom to try and look for, because besides a couple of suspect rare boletes which are considered that may be poisonous, the majority of boletes, almost all of them, are not poisonous. Now that doesn't mean that if you find a mushroom with pores that you can eat it, but what it means is that it's not going to be a death cap, it's not going to be a deadly fibre cap, it's not going to be a jack-o'-lantern, because it doesn't have gills. So the poisonous mushrooms that you could mix it up with would be something like Satan's bolete, which is suspect anyway, and it's incredibly rare, and it's very distinguishable because it has a bright white cap and a red stem. So the boletes are a very good place to begin mushroom hunting because they're very easy to identify and incredibly tasty. There's lots of different ways to dry them. I happen to have a dehydrator, so I'm going to use that. I'm just going to chop them into thin slices and then put them on the racks and then stick them in the dehydrator. Oh dear. So what I normally do is as well, I don't like when there's maggot flies in there. So if I can see anything like really obvious, then I normally remove it. Sometimes you can get away with just cutting with a knife the bottom part of the tubes off, and then you can see that there's no maggots in this part of it. So I always try and use as much as possible. There's a bit of a maggot hole there, I'll just excise that. Now you get some people that just eat them anyway, like with the maggots in. To me that's a little bit too unappealing. It would bother me. Maybe it wouldn't, I don't know. But that's what I do at the moment. This is a dehydrator, so it just blows hot air through here. That's hops from something else. And the hot air just comes through the trays and out the top. I normally stick this on about 50 degrees and leave it on for 48 hours just to make sure that they're super bone dry. Now these things are unbelievably cheaply made. There's a shaded pole motor in there and a coil of wire which heats up and blows, and the shaded pole motor has a little fan on it which blows the air through it. They're really cheaply made. I had to open it up to fix this one, and yeah, but they work, so that's all you need really. When they're done, they will just snap, like be really bone dry. Don't want them to be bendy or anything like that. Store them in a jar with like a rubber sealed top. Label them, that's important. We used to not label them thinking, oh, we'll remember what's in there, and then forget. And these will last ages, like even after, up to a year or more, they'll still be good. The interesting thing is, once they've been stored for a while, they develop a really nice, rich smell, and they're great for cooking. You just rehydrate them in any dish and then you're done. That's it. So that's our orange birch bolete.